to the Kennedy Events Podcast, where we feature top marketing, communications, and future of work leaders and share their biggest takeaways and insights. We love these conversations and hope you will too. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Kennedy Events Podcast. I'm your host, Paige Buck. Past guests include Anna Nicholson of Yahoo, Cara DeFabio of Economic Security Project, and Marty Grimmick of International Connector. And today I am delighted to be speaking with Sophia Piliouras, Chief Operating Officer and Corporate Secretary of the Minority Corporate Counsel Association, MCCA, the preeminent advisor on diversity, equity, and inclusion to C-suites across corporate America. Ms. Piliouras' longstanding commitment to racial and gender equity goes hand in hand with her belief that leaders become change makers when they strive to always do better. By consistently advocating for sustainable DEI strategies and modeling effective allyship, she empowers today's leaders to take action beyond the status quo. Today's episode is brought to you by Kennedy Events. Kennedy Events creates stress-free conferences and events, providing expert event management and design for all your corporate needs, from in-person to hybrid and virtual. And you can learn more about us at kennedyevents.com. Sophia, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Paige.
I am just delighted, and I'm really curious to learn about your career trajectory. So tell me how you got started, what the early days of professional Sophia looked like.
Quite a journey. So I went into college and understanding I wanted to do something international, connecting kind of my own experience as a child of Greek immigrants to my experience here as an American and what I learned and my differences in the way I was raised and how I saw women in the workforce as well. And realizing, never knowing, do I want to be a lawyer? What do I want to do? State Department. And, my father always had the dream of most immigrants. I would say in my culture, there are two jobs, doctor or lawyer. They don't really understand there's anything else on the spectrum. I think nowadays it's changed. And so I didn't want to kind of fall into that right away. So upon graduation of college, I took some time to live abroad to really see what the reality of that would be. I also took some time, about 3.5 years, to work. Like most people, I was paying for my education, working as many jobs as possible, didn't have a lot of office experience, and really wanted to have that experience before I made that investment in my education. And so after about 3 years, I realized, a Juris Doctorate, a JD, was actually a little more versatile and flexible than an MBA. And really, the justice warrior in me as well wanted to jump into the law. I protect people like my parents who were discriminated against, or people try to cheat them in terms of contracts in business. So that was always activated in me as a young child, and kind of defending, like my parents, being also the primary translator in my family, right? In many things that my parents did. And I decided on law school, and I decided to take the big jump to go to law school in New York City. That was always a dream of mine as a young kid. I used to read like Interview magazine and Vogue, and like just see what is happening. Oh, it was something, Paige, that I used to just kind of fantasize in there, like, wow, to live in New York and leave Wisconsin. And I really went in there with a pragmatic state of mind. I'd done project management, I'd done consulting. I also worked for a startup software company in doing marketing this is the internet boom of the 90s, prior to going to law school, and realizing that although I did want to do public international law and work with NGOs and focus on gender equity and racial and ethnic equity in the global scale, also understanding in order to create change, there needs to be some economic empowerment. That's just pragmatic. So really learning both sides of it, finding my passion, doing quite a bit of work in terms of human rights, sexual orientation asylum cases. I did many, 2 of my 3 years in law school working for a specialty firm that did that. Some of the most rewarding kind of human experiences I ever had. Graduating law school and realizing I have well over 6 figures of debt.
Yeah. Oh, there's that.
My fellowship, which was focused on reproductive rights of women, is going to pay me less than what I made as a project manager before law school. What am I going to do? And so I made the really difficult but necessary decision to pivot to corporate litigation. And so that is where my legal career really was based in Manhattan, working for larger firms, and understanding also that I had an aptitude for it. And I also enjoyed that aspect of the work, really seeing the inner machinations of a corporation, of decisions, risk analysis, legal analysis, the impact on strategy, the impact on reputation, analysis of reputational risk. So truly, it was enjoyable, but always going back in my pro bono work to fulfill the justice warrior side of me. After several years in-house, at my law firm, like most attorneys, I realized I don't feel a part of this culture. I don't feel seen. I don't feel heard, especially as a woman, and especially as a larger woman, not fitting the stereotype of what appropriate feminine presentation would be. Just due to size. That was a real wake-up call for me, being in white-collar America and working a lot of gender issues in women's group within the legal profession, not only to help, but to understand, like, what am I doing? How do I navigate my own career? That led me in-house. Again, I realized I'm not going to be a partner. This is not the culture for me. You'll talk to a lot of lawyers, Paige. At 7-8 years, we run.
Yes, that certainly seems to be my anecdotal experience from all the other in-house firm-based lawyers that I know. And it's like, pay the college debt, get a leg up, and then run away.
And do the work that really speaks to you. Because one thing I learned, even in times where I really was questioning myself, what am I doing? Why am I here? Am I good enough? Those 9:30, 10:30 p.m., like sitting at your desk and wondering, but always coming back, I love the work. I don't always love who I work with, or I don't love this culture, but I do love the work. I got to figure this out. I'm not going to be driven out, because I had moments where I was like, maybe I'm going to leave the legal profession. Maybe I should go to the business side, because that spoke to me. And then I found this world as an in-house attorney at JP Morgan Chase that kind of opened up both sides to me. Because the key skill set that is necessary for an in-house attorney is not just like the legal side. Your job is not to bring risk to zero and avoid all malpractice. That's an improbability in business. There's always risk. But truly realizing kind of my business skills and even my exposure to my parents, they owned restaurants, and helping them, doing books, that little work and in terms of a small business owner, that practicality, common sense really worked for me in-house. And I really learned that was my strength, balancing kind of legal need with business need and really servicing my clients, which were the internal business lines of the company. My client and my boss is the company itself that I am in-house. So that kind of opened the world up. I was brought in.
When you left, did you find culture fit at JP Morgan? Did you feel better supported, seen, a part of a team?
Yes and no. So there is part of that corporate America. It's a different political game, to be very blunt, and it's a different political navigation. And realizing I'm very blunt, I'm very much a straight shooter, and as a litigator and in a firm, that actually was a value, and not as valued in-house, required more finesse. And so I had to develop that finesse. That was my learning lesson going in-house. There was this kind of level setting and kind of navigating, understanding the lay of the land. But the work itself and servicing my clients and really digging into what we were doing spoke to me. And a part of that, which kind of opened up a huge can of aha moments for me, was actually in the work itself. We had to report to the OCC, the regulator of large financial institutions, the diversity of our supplier networks, our third-party service providers. And for us in the legal department, it was the law firms. That opened up this world of really diving into all the facets of diversity, because before I was focusing more on gender and the intersectionality of LGBTQ+ or race and ethnicity, but gender. I did a lot of gender work. And And my colleague at JP Morgan Chase was Jean Lee, and she was on the board of MCCA. And she started to share with me like tools and stats and things that, because I was like, how am I going to get this? Is this part of our RFP? Like my project management like experience before I went to law school really served me well in-house. I was able to speak a language that our project management team understood. I knew their tools. I knew how they worked. I knew the underlying skill needed to execute certain things so we could really move quickly. And as I dug into this work and started doing more research, I started asking Jean more about what MCCA was doing to understand, you know, my involvement volunteering. I became frustrated with my outside counsel when they would come to pitch to me. I was seeing page tokenism, right? As a woman, I would be interviewing firms to hire them for work, and I would see a woman in the meeting, and I read all the bios and resumes before I meet with a firm that's pitching to me, and I'm like, Paige, respectfully, why are you in this meeting? Because I see that your specialty is labor and employment, and I'm interviewing the firm for bankruptcy right now.
Well, they pulled me into the elevator this morning because they realized they were a bunch of white men walking out the door to a meeting.
Dang, that's exactly it. And then also not having them follow directions or answer the question, and also realizing that these women or these other diverse attorneys were also not being given tools to shine. And I'm not getting all the information I need. And they don't know how to pitch. They're not being trained well. So I actually volunteered, and I started working with MCCA as a volunteer in a business development like mock pitch workshop, where I was like, this is where you're going to get the real information. Here are the do's and don'ts when you come to pitch to me. This is how you're going to answer my questions. This is what I'm looking for. This is what you're going to do. And I brought in other leaders who did the hiring, and specifically for women and attorneys of color. Like the number one thing MCCA research kept saying is they do not get constructive feedback. They do not know something's going left until it's too late, and all of a sudden they're being laid off or they're being pushed out, to be very blunt. And when Jean was offered the CEO position here, she came to me. And as I said to you earlier, I was kind of shocked. I never would have thought about this, about joining her to help build this organization, help it thrive, and really do this work. She's like, you already do it. You've been doing it. Like you have the in-house knowledge, you have the law firm knowledge. You know, I'm a self-proclaimed and proud like research and data nerd. I've been since a kid. And after about 6 months of discussion, I realized like, yeah, this is something I'm going to do. Even though if you had said that to me 5 years earlier, I was like, I'm not working for a nonprofit. What are you talking about? Like,
Right.
As in the business side, I will never give up my legal license. I'm a lawyer. That's my brand. Like that's my badge of honor. That's my identity. I really, so, it was a wonderful thing because ultimately what made me kind of pull the proverbial trigger is like, wow, I think this is like a full circle moment for me. This is why I went to law school. And I always kind of, I don't know, sad is the word, but I always felt like, you know, I went to law school to help people. And now I'm kind of on this other side where I'm helping companies. And sometimes I don't think I'm helping people. Like, why did I do this work? I don't feel connected passionately to what I'm doing and invested. Because I thought, where's the one moment where I was like, I am so proud I'm a lawyer. And that was my work that I did for Sexual Orientation Asylum for that small firm during my law. Like that is, I mean, I literally cried when we got like the positive verdict for my client. I mean, we cried together. We jumped up and down.
Yeah.
And yeah.
You only noticed, do you feel like you noticed in retrospect that part of you wasn't fed, or did you know it all along?
I knew it was not fed. And so I have been doing pro bono work, working with the Kind Project, which helped children who are immigrating in representation. And yeah, I was trying to find it on the side through my pro bono work or working through like the ERGs within the organization, the employee resource groups, but it wasn't enough. And I also felt frustrated because like, wow, we just keep having meeting over a meeting, talking about what we're going to do, but when are we going to actually do the work we keep talking about?
Yeah.
So that's what made me pull the trigger. I was like, that was it. And this is an opportunity. And guess what? I can always come back. Don't burn a bridge. I left JP Morgan Chase. I explained to them. They were wholeheartedly supportive of me. Still continue to talk to my colleagues and my people there. And they're a member of MCCA. So I do the good work with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, has this work, the demand for this work in DEI skyrocketed since the George Floyd and Breonna Taylor protest summer? And what's happening now as that unfortunately is further in the rearview mirror and not getting as much attention?
That's right. It absolutely did. It absolutely did. I saw it trending even a year and a half, 2 years before with the Me Too movement, what happened in Ferguson, Missouri, what was happening during our election, our 2016 election, and those discussions. So I saw more questions from our members about action-oriented strategies rather than aesthetic diversity, which we call it. Let's put up your logo and let's say we support you and we'll mail you the check and we'll see you at the conference and that's it.
Or put our logo at the bottom. And yes, yes.
Exactly. I mean, Kennedy events, they know about that. Like branding for these companies, it's like if you spent half the time on strategy, like human talent management over like visibility of your logo, we would be so much further today. In terms of where we are in corporate America. I mean, it's still 90% straight, white, cisgender male. Maybe now it's 88%, but it's always been between 88 and 92% in every survey I see, including our own. Wow. So you're right on that. I also saw a lot of inexperience, like consultants coming into the industry. I mean, many of my members were coming to us and saying, who is this? Who is this? Do you know them? Could you give us any insight? A lot of people without experience really just kind of trying to monetize the moment. And that caused a lot of confusion in the community of like, where's the real work and the substance matter, the subject matter expertise? Because diversity changed, I would say, in the last 20 years from when I was in law school till now, from being like a feel-good programmatic, like let's have a speaker come in, let's look at a book and have a discussion about it, to how do we embed this in our business strategy? Let's look at this, let's actually put on our legal hats, because as an attorney, you can understand like where is this needed, not only from a labor and employment perspective, but building organizational culture, operational efficiency, all those kind of aspects. As you've noted, in the last, I would say 9 months, maybe not fully 12, but for sure the last, I've seen everyone taking a step back. And we knew that, we said that the pendulum always swings it to an extreme right, to the extreme left, and then it will slowly adjust. And we went from this extreme left pendulum swing to now this right, where it's like very anti-woke. Diversity is a dirty word. I was so ecstatic in 2020 when we could actually start saying the R word, racism, and speak very bluntly about what was happening instead of using the more polite term of bias.
Yes, unconscious bias too. Like, well, some of us have conscious biases even. Let's just admit it.
Thank you. Let's take some responsibility, right? Like, I really felt that was a deflection of like, it's unconscious. You're not even aware. You're not doing it purposely. You're a good person. Don't forget that. That's the other thing.
If you're not telling me I'm a good person 5 times a day, then you're telling me I'm
That's exactly it. That's it. Really personalizing this and saying, look, this is not you. This is not a reflection of you. There has been systemic inequities and racism built into our government from its inception. And as lawyers, that's where we started a lot of the education that people did not. There are statutes on record. There's this wonderful book. Do I have it right here? It might be in my living room because I was reading it. But The Color of Law. It's an amazing book. Have you read that?
I've just heard amazing things about it. It's on my, I have to write it down again. It's on my list.
Paige, it's eye-opening, and it's for non-lawyers, right? Because it literally shows, the history of this country, of where there were laws specifically implemented to bar African American, Asian, his like all the like I said, different races and ethnicities, but the primary three groups that we do talk about, impeding them from owning property, owning a business, getting credit, like economic disadvantage that was literally legislated into our laws.
We baked it in. I live in the neighborhood in Berkeley, California that Kamala Harris grew up in. And this is the neighborhood of multifamily dwellings, of much more density, and where all of the mixed race schools of the 50s, 60s, and 70s were kept, because they redlined everything into this section. And you know, if I didn't, we moved here in 2018, and as a lot of this was sort of coming to light, and it gave me a completely different perspective on where I live.
Yes, there is, I think it's, so New York, one of the things, I cannot remember the book, Power of, I will look it up and send it to you, but it's basically about how New York was built, the urban planning of New York.
Is this a Robert Caro book, maybe?
Yes.
My mother's a librarian. This is what happened. That's really, there's so many powerful stories that can help us understand, like, this is all baked in. We're surrounded by this. You didn't do it. You're not a bad person, but now would you like to be part of making the positive change?
Yeah. I mean, do you know that they built the underpasses purposely low in Queens so that the buses could not go under them? So they would keep the African-American, Hispanic, and Latinx people from like the Bronx and Upper Manhattan getting to the beach and keeping Jones Beach, etc., white.
Yeah, just incredible.
And yeah, it is. And I didn't even know this. I was reading it because I love real estate, love construction. That's part of my background as well. So it really was that kind of education and breaking that out. But again, now that we're in a challenging economy, and we're also kind of in this anti-woke backlash, we see what's happening in Florida, don't say gay. We see what the DeSantis battle with Disney. I'm really proud of Disney making that big stand. I gotta be honest, I was wary that they would make such a large declaration of removing themselves from the state of Florida, because they literally built Central Florida. There are entire cities that were built by Disney for their employees and for the parks and everything. And it brings in trillions of dollars. So we're in this place of racism is now too strong of a word. We're going back to bias. I had to have several meetings with comms teams about some of the titles that I had at the conference that Kennedy Events helped us with. Oh yeah, because racism was in the title.
They want you to dial it back down for 2023. That's hard to hear. I'm sorry to hear that.
This was 2022, actually, so that I could have their people speak. They were worried. Yes, that it's a very forceful and provocative title. And I was like, it's a very provocative subject.
Yeah. Yes, that's the idea. That's exactly it. Wow. But they're concerned about turning people off before they've even walked in the door.
Yeah. And it's kind of finding that balance. I've heard people say, like, I think it's also they just want to erase the trauma of the last 2 years. Some of it, obviously, and rightfully so, connected to the pandemic. Sick and tired of talking about it. I've heard that as well. And like, well, we've been talking about it for a long time, and we finally got into a place of action. We can't stop now. And part of the discussion and where that narrative changed, that to your prior question, is like, it's not just about feel good. It's not just the morally right thing to do. There's been so much research from McKinsey, from Pew. I mean, every kind of major publication has outlined the business case for diversity since the late 90s. And it does show that diverse teams are more profitable. Like, these companies grow and expand. So if you really want to think about it in a pragmatic way, here we go. It should be, right, baked in, not bolted on, and baked into your business strategy.
Right.
Not into your kind of social feel good. Exactly. You're recruiting, you're hiring. How do you recruit? How do you promote? Right? How do you conduct your performance evaluations? How do you do compensation reviews? We've seen in the last 5 years the pay equity analysis that our many large institutions and large companies have done. because there has been pay inequity, has been proven, and kind of that correction. There are, and why do you do that? Because women do have value and we do bring something to the table, and you want to retain the women in your workforce. Women left the workforce in droves during the pandemic because still socially, there's still many of them are responsible for kind of the home, as well as being a primary breadwinner or a full-time employee. I mean, there's thousands of articles written on that. I won't speak to that, but how do you stem this, right? The reentry to work, women who've taken, JP Morgan Chase had an amazing program, and I know others do this, a reentry of you took time off to have your kids. You've been gone for like 5-10 years. Your kids are now back in school and you want to reenter. Before, I would say in the 90s and before, or even the early aughts, that once you're out for more than 3-4 years, you're out. Reentry was difficult. So really thinking about that. And like I said, seeing the value of it. But now as we do see an economic downturn, what I was concerned about is what happened in 2008 with the big crash. The first thing out the door, the first thing cut from the budget is DEI.
And then marketing. Well, which are where the women are traditionally employed. Imagine that.
And recruiting.
Overwhelmingly pink collar jobs. Yeah.
The diversity teams. I just recently read an article, I think it was the Harvard Business Review, in terms of the stats of attrition. It's like triple for diverse professionals. Whereas in the summer of 2020 through the end of 2020, there was this massive hiring frenzy. All of a sudden, everyone realized they needed a chief diversity officer or a diversity director. And if you look back now, within 12 to 18 months of all those hires, if you look back, most are no longer at those organizations. They've either quit, they were fired, they've moved on, they've dropped out. And I see that happening now again, is that a lot of budgets are cut and a lot of people are let go. And my question is, what changed? Like the need for this, we solved racism? We solved systemic racism?
Job done. Pat yourself on the back. So this is all, I have to say, it's hard to hear. It's disappointing. What, give me a silver lining. Give me something you feel really hopeful about. What can be done in this moment? Do you feel like you have members at MCCA who have absolutely bought hook, line, and sinker that business argument and are like, this is how we're building our practice? Or do you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's what keeps us going. And to have still many leaders, and again, being respectful of their own position as a public figure, that are still invested, that put so much of their time into helping drive our mission and our vision. That's the silver lining. That's what keeps you doing the hard work when you kind of see this, because it's something we always talked about: 3 steps forward, 4 steps back, sometimes 3 steps forward, 2.5 steps. So be grateful for that. We did get somewhere. It's a slow game, but that is the silver lining. And yes, we do have members that are constantly thinking about this from, again, a strategic kind of point of view and less of the feel good. And recruiting is a great example that you said earlier. Like, how do you hire? What is the process? How do you review resumes? How do you write your job descriptions? Are they inclusive? Are they really communicating truly what your culture is and how you see yourselves? What are your values? And the other silver lining is this generation, the younger millennials, I would say, and the Gen Z, but mostly the Gen Z. They've never lived in a world where this wasn't a topic of discussion. I am a 48-year-old woman. I have no problem saying that. When I was in school, but we didn't have discussions about equity and inclusion and diversity. I didn't have those discussions in college, right?
Right.
And so I'm very hopeful because I do see this debate. I see, again, we're in this pendulum, but they're in the workforce. They're entering. The millennials are starting to become managers. And we are starting to see people who have not seen a world without this and know the value intrinsically. We don't have to do the business case. Something that Jean Lee, our CEO, said many times is like, how many like white women or men, but specifically white men, are asked to kind of like monetize and justify their value? Or do we do that? Like, because that's what the business case is, like putting a numeric dollar amount towards a person and saying, you know, by hiring someone who's like Latinx, what is the monetization and the benefit of that? Have we done that for white men?
Huh, never.
Exactly.
Probably a negative balance. And I'm just kidding. That's not fair. Where do you see the opportunity to move the needle? And I'm curious where in all of the educational events that you do, we talked a little bit about this before we started recording. There's COVID created a demand and an interest and an opportunity with virtual programs that now it's, can you implement, and how do you choose between the desire for people to be together in person, learning something, versus this is convenient, we can hop on Zoom and I can learn it here.
Right. So there's challenges from both ends, because the beauty of having virtual events was the inclusion. There are many people who are not senior enough, right, who don't get the budget to travel, especially for in-house legal departments. Budgets can be limited, and there's, Chase, there's like 300 people in the consumer bank, 300 attorneys. You can't get the golden ticket to go to your favorite conference every year. It's not fair. It's not equitable. So that was the benefit in a time also, and I'll speak in 2020, where there was a desperate cry for like, I need my community. I need support. I need people who will like validate. I'm not crazy in saying these things. And I'm not, again, being dramatic, a snowflake, a liberal, all these ridiculous terms that we hear when you're just trying to see what's equitable, what's reality, and using facts. So I did like that about the virtual events, as did our members. And I've heard that through other associations. The issue is like, I can't wait to see everyone in person. And the magic, and like I said, Kennedy always helped us do this last year in our first time being in person in 3 years. And it's our Creating Pathways to Diversity conference. It's kind of our thought leadership conference and our biggest one, but bringing everyone together and that excitement of having, like, being able to see Paige and hug you or sit next to you and brainstorm with you.
And there was a rush. I mean, in a business event, it was weird to feel like these rush of emotions. Kind of coursing through. All of last year, as we went back to live, we noticed it was really hard to get people to go back into session rooms because they just wanted more moments for connection.
That was our takeaway. That was definitely a takeaway. We always try to survey our constituents to understand what can we do better. We are all about improving. We're not about the status quo. And that was the number one ask. We want more time to talk to each other. We want more time to network and connect. And that is a change that will happen at our conference this year. Is yes, we do want to focus on the work, action-oriented work, action-oriented strategies, share the knowledge. Kind of our motto, our credo is know, do, lead, transform. And that's really how we've changed things. Know your data, know what you're doing. That's been a game changer. Technology has helped kind of really start to look at the stats and cut them left and right and understand objectively, right? Not subjective, not putting your feelings or your experience into that, like what is literally happening. And objective facts speak to attorneys. So we definitely, and we're very data driven to show here's the reality. There's no bias behind this kind of statement and the actions that we are recommending. This is the reality of what we're reading and we're finding as we analyze the research. Do is like, once you know, now you know what to do, what you can put into place. And if, and we do this with our members, and if you've succeeded and you've had success in implementing this strategy, showing its real impact, then lead, share it with the community. And if we all start to kind of like learn from each other, like Paige, if you have best practices and you kind of figured out, what the magic solution is maybe for a specific recruiting issue, why should I build it from scratch? Let me go to Paige and get her playbook. Obviously I have to tweak it, but I get a framework. We can drive forward. I get case studies of what real success looks like and not just kind of anecdotal evidence. that's been the big change that I've seen in the last few years. That's the big change in our events and how we speak about challenges and opportunities for change and strategy. You will see that at MCCA quite a bit. We talk about strategy, and as we've said several times during our talk, like baking it in, not bolting it on.
I love
Right?
that.
If you bolt it on, if it's Sophia's initiative, and let's say Sophia leaves 5 years down the road, what I constantly see is the program dies when Sophia goes. And then Paige is there to pick up the pieces, and she's starting from zero, and then it's Groundhog's Day. It's just the same thing as everyone goes in and out. If you bake it into the system and not into a person, right? Or it's one person driving it, it will be sustainable. That's number 2 in our biggest message, sustainability. It speaks to what's happening in corporate America in terms of, I don't know if you're familiar with ESG strategies and the requirements. That's a huge thing. And the S part, we say it's not just social, it's also for sustainability and strategy.
Yeah. So it sounds too like you've built a community where people are eager to share with one another and not be like, we solved it, but we're not going to tell you how.
Sometimes you get that, but it's rare. But no, they want to share because again, our community is very passionate about this. Many of the attorneys that are our relationship partners through our membership, that are primary point of contact, this is their second full-time job. They're full-time attorneys, and they're doing it because it means that much to them. They want to see that change. They want the next generation or the ones coming up behind them to not face the same barriers. So that is something that is amazing. Info sharing and best practices, all those things are very popular and needed. Our biggest problem is having enough bandwidth because we're small but mighty and trying to scale and grow. As a COO, that is one of my strategies moving forward and has been for the last 3 years in terms of utilizing technology to scale and to grow, to empower culture, right? Employee engagement. And our
You have an example of how you're using tech to help you scale?
Oh, in terms of even a CRM, and we use Salesforce for people who are not. Automation. We are constantly reviewing how to automate, how to, from our marketing campaigns, right? Our outgoing messages, our touch points, our communication campaigns with our members, invoicing, all of those items. We even use project management software. We're looking at even more robust project management software as we look at kind of the game change of AI, right? AI, ChatGPT, that's all anyone's talking about.
Yes.
There's value there because we realize, one, more humans, more error. So reduce the kind of, errors and help us move faster as we scale. But it also allows our team and to focus on the work that drives them and not the drudgery of like data entry or, those kind of like the things that need to be done, like being able to templatize. So that has been a focus where we've been very successful. And even our board, but many people always like, wow, you guys really use technology thoughtfully. It's kind of unique for a smaller organization. And we're like, you have to, like, we want the people to be here to be passionate, but doing the work that drives them. Yes, not every day at work is fun. Not everything you do is fun or your passion project, but minimize some of that and let technology do that work and let the people do the necessary work, right? As a nonprofit, as a CEO, I got to maximize our, we're a nonprofit, we get membership fees and dues, and to be able to maximize the use of those dollars to show them our fiscal responsibility. You've seen that, like I always check out a charity is like, wait a minute, only 13% of your donations are actually utilized for the cause. And right?
Yeah, people are asking, they want to see that. I love the idea that what you're getting at is something I hear a lot among like fellow business owners and entrepreneurs is, what is your highest best purpose? What's the best use of you in any given moment? And is it filtering out spam from your email? No. I mean, and hopefully you have tools implemented to do that. Is it crafting a fresh marketing message? And should you really be putting your attention on that? Even if that's what you were really great at 10 years ago, now you're running the business. Is that what you should be doing?
That's right.
Yeah, it's very savvy. And your board should be giving you a lot of credit for that, because I don't think there are a lot of nonprofits, associations, or small businesses that do that incredibly well. So that you're doing it is huge.
That was part of my learning curve, right? When I came into this industry. And I think I'm actually grateful, outside of volunteering and doing pro bono work. And I did work as, like I said, for a nonprofit doing gender reproductive rights for about a year in law school. But I think some of that ignorance, I wasn't tied to the old way of doing things. Nonprofits are traditionally slower, less focused on business outcomes and more focused on feel good. And I am generalizing to a bit, but again, that was even my own perception and bias. And I came in as like, we're a startup.
Yes.
We are, because we were rebuilding and we were reframing our work and really taking our brand to another level, our message to another level, because we saw kind of a dimming of the light of the organization. And we wanted to really kind of say, hey, we've been here the longest. You know, our founders started this and we've been around now 26 years. We were the first. And we don't want to be that antiquated dinosaur that just kind of is there. We are innovators, we are disruptors. And that's how we approach not only our messaging and the tools and the actions we share with our members, but the way we look at our own operations and growth. And that's also been a blessing and a curse, because it's hard. We're in a unique little lane and it's really hard to communicate that and find the right kind of fit in terms of talent. Understanding corporate America, because that is who we service, right? And we're trying to change, but also understanding the nimbleness of like a startup or what a nonprofit's mission should be.
Oh, yeah. And then when you find that person, what a gem. Well, I think that's such a wise choice, like strategic business choice for MCCA to frame yourself and keep that like startup mindset always. That's probably serving you guys extremely well. And so on that note, as we wrap up, I'll ask you sort of, who do you go to for inspiration or mentorship, and who do you admire who kind of keeps you on that cutting edge, or that curiosity you clearly bring to everything?
That, it's changed over the years. You know, as a young girl, I was all about Madeleine Albright when she became secretary. Like, that just blew my mind. But now, I would say, especially in this world that I live in, that is kind of an intersection of like still the legal world and my past kind of profession and my current profession, would be Michelle Coleman Mace. I really got to know her and know who she is through my work here at MCCA. She is the general counsel of the New York Public Library, but before that, she was general counsel of Allstate. She was general counsel of Pitney Bowes, one of the first African-American female general counsels in corporate America, true trailblazer. We honored her as a Charlotte E. Ray award, which is named after the first woman in New York who became an attorney, and her kind of challenges. And she just tells it like it is, Paige. She does the work. She's been in the trenches. She's got an amazing business mind. She has a very pragmatic view, and she has no, I think, and she even says it's like she's been in the game so long. She has no patience for BS, and she calls things out, but she's so charismatic. She is such a powerful speaker and an inspirational speaker, that there's total forgiveness and sometimes in the bluntness of the message. And also her fashion game, Paige, is on point. Her necklaces, her power, she does statement jewelry like no one else. And
oh my goodness.
Just again, taking it to levels. She's the whole pocket, but she is amazing. And she's not only an inspiration to me, but to many women of all colors and races and all across the gamut in terms of how to lead and how to lead change. She was never happy with the status quo, and she always blew the status quo out of the water wherever she went. She would truly to be that in my real life right now. I will drop everything to go see her talk. I follow her, and when I'm having a bad day, I will go to our YouTube channel and I will watch her Charlotte E. Ray speech. It's
lovely.
amazing.
All right. I'm going to have to go look that up. We will link to that in the show notes because that sounds like a really good pick me up.
Yes.
I think folks need to hear that. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being with me today, Sophia. I really appreciate your time. I have had such a fantastic time getting to know you. And so just for our audience, this has been Sophia Piliouras of MCCA, and we will link to all the places people can connect with you. Is LinkedIn your preferred outreach mechanism?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I welcome that. Here to help anyone and everyone in kind of driving the change that we're all looking for right now, the transformation. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Paige. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Kennedy Events Podcast. Come back next time and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.